Hey guys, welcome. We're going to read the next couple of chapters in the Tale of Despereaux today. Sitting out on my porch today. I hope you've been outside. It's beautiful weather. So if you have not been outside playing, you need to get out there and play. When we left off Tale of Despereaux last time, we had met a new character whose name was Miggery Sow, and she didn't know it yet. She was a young girl and she didn't know it, but she was going to be instrumental in helping the rat work his revenge. And that was the end of the second book. So today we're going to start book the third, and it's called Gore, Miggery Sow. Chapter 24. A handful of cigarettes, a red tablecloth, and a hen. Again, reader, we must go backward before we can go forward. With that said, here begins a short history of the life and times of Miggery Sow, a girl born into this world many years before the mouse Despereaux and the rat Chiaroscuro. A girl born far from the castle, a girl named for her father's favorite prize-winning pig. Miggery Sow was 6 years old when her mother, holding on to Mig's hand and staring directly into Mig's eyes, died. "Ma," said Mig. "Ma, couldn't you stay here with me?" "Oh," said her mother. "Who is that? Who is that holding my hand?" "It's me, Ma. It's Miggery Sow." "Ah, child, let me go." "But I want you to stay here," said Mig, wiping first at her runny nose and then at her runny eyes. "You want?" said her mother. "Yes," said Mig, "I want." "Ah, child, and what does it matter what you are wanting?" said her mother. She squeezed Mig's hand once, twice, and then she died, leaving Mig alone with her father, who, on a market day in the spring soon after his wife's death, sold his daughter into service for a handful of cigarettes, a red tablecloth, and a hen. "Papa?" said Mig when her father was walking away from her with the hen in his arms, a cigarette in his mouth, and the red tablecloth draped across his shoulders like a cape. "Go on, Mig," he said. "You belong to that man now." "But I don't want to, Papa. I want to go with you." She took hold of the red tablecloth and tugged on it. "Goodness, child. And who is asking you what you want? Now go on." He untangled her fingers from the cloth and turned her in the direction of the man who had bought her. Meg watched her father walk away, the red tablecloth billowing out behind him. He left his daughter, and reader, as you already know, he did not look back, not even once. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine your father selling you for a tablecloth, a hen, and a handful of cigarettes? Close your eyes, please, and consider it for just a moment. Are you done? I hope that the hair on the back of your neck stood up as you thought of Meg's fate and how it would be if that were your own. Poor Meg, what will become of her? You must, frightened though you may be, read on and see for yourself. Reader, it is your duty. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 25, A Vicious Circle. Miggery Sow called the man who bought her Uncle because he told her she had to. And also, as he said she must, Mig tended Uncle's sheep and cooked Uncle's food and scrubbed Uncle's kettle. She did all of this without a word of thanks or praise from the man himself. Another unfortunate fact of life with Uncle was that he very much liked giving Mig what he referred to as a good clout to the ear. In fairness to Uncle, it must be reported that he always did ask whether or not Mig was interested in receiving the clout. Their daily exchanges went something like this. Uncle says, "I thought I told you to clean the kettle." And Mig says, "I cleaned it, Uncle. I cleaned it good." Uncle says, "Ah, it's filthy. You'll have to be punished, won't ye?" "Gore, Uncle, but I cleaned the kettle." "Are you saying I'm a liar, girl?" "No, Uncle." "Do you want a good clout to the ear, then?" "No, thank you, Uncle, I don't." Alas, Uncle seemed to be as entirely unconcerned with what Meg wanted as her mother and father had been. The discussed clout to the ear was always delivered, I am afraid, with a great deal of enthusiasm on Uncle's part, and received with absolutely no enthusiasm at all on the part of Meg. These clouts were alarmingly frequent, and Uncle was scrupulously fair in paying attention to both the right and left side of Miggery Sow's head. So it was that after a time, the young Mig's ears came to resemble not so much as ears, but more like pieces of cauliflower stuck to either side of her head. And they became about as useful to her as pieces of cauliflower. That is to say, that they all but ceased their functioning as ears. Words for Mig lost their sharp edges, and then they lost their edges altogether and became blurry, blankety things that she had a great deal of trouble making any sense out of at all. The less Mig heard, the less she understood. The less she understood, the more things she did wrong, and the more things she did wrong, the more clouts to the ear she received, and the less she heard. This is what's known as a vicious cycle. And Miggery Sow was right in the center of it, which is not, reader, where anybody would want to be. But then, as you know, what Miggery Sow wanted had never been much of a concern to anyone. So I'm going to stop for a second, I'm assuming that when it says a clout to the ear, that means that he grabbed her ears and gave her a good pinching or something. I've never heard that word used before, but I'm assuming, based on context clues, that that's what is happening. And then her ears are starting to look more like cauliflower. I think we have time for one more chapter. Chapter 26, Royalty. When Mig turned 7 years old, there was no cake, no celebration, no singing, no presents, no acknowledgement of her birthday at all, other than Mig saying, "Uncle, today I am 7 years old." And Uncle saying in return, "Did I ask you how old you were today? Get out of my face before I give you a good clout to the ear." A few hours after receiving her birthday clout to the ear, Mig was out in the field with Uncle's sheep when she saw something glittering and glowing on the horizon. She thought for a moment that it was the sun, but she turned and saw that the sun was in the west, where it should be, sinking to join the earth. This thing that shone so brightly was something else. Mig stood in the field and shaded her eyes with her left hand and watched the brilliant light draw closer and closer until it revealed itself to be King Philip and his Queen Rosemary and their daughter, the young Princess P. The royal family was surrounded by knights in shining armor and horses in shining armor, and atop each member of the royal family's head there was a golden crown, and they were all, the king and queen and the princess, dressed in robes decorated with jewels and sequins that glittered and glowed and captured the light of the setting sun and reflected it back. "Gore," breathed Mig. The Princess P was riding on a white horse that picked up its legs very high and set them down very daintily. The P saw Mig standing and staring, and she raised a hand to her. "Hello," the Princess P called out merrily. "Hello." Mig did not wave back. Instead, she stood and watched, open-mouthed, as the perfect, beautiful family passed her by. "Papa," called the princess to the king, "what is wrong with that girl? She will not even wave to me." "Never mind," said the king. "It doesn't matter, my dear." "But I am a princess, and I waved to her. She should wave back." Mig, for her part, continued to stare. Looking at the royal family had awakened some deep and slumbering need in her. It was as if a small candle had been lit in her interior, sparked to life by the brilliance of the king and the queen and the princess. For the first time in her life, reader, Mig hoped. And hope is like love, a ridiculous, wonderful, powerful thing. Mig tried to name this strange emotion. She put a hand up to touch one of her aching ears, and she realized that the feeling she was experiencing, the hope blooming inside of her, felt exactly the opposite of a good clap to the ear. She smiled and took her hand away from her ear. She waved to the princess. "Today's my birthday," Mig called out. But the king and the queen and the princess were by now too far away to hear her. "Today," shouted Mig, "I am 7 years old." And that's the end of chapter 26. We'll start chapter 27 tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, here's a picture for you of Miggery Sow. I'm going to hold it up and hope that you can see it. Yep, there it is. That's her watching as the royal court goes by. Okay, kiddos, I'm missing you. I miss read aloud time. It's my favorite part of the day. You know that. So I hope you're joining and listening along with me. I miss you. See you tomorrow.